Hey everybody! This week's First Chapter Friday is a little different than all of our others because this is actually a nonfiction book. The book for this week is called Wolfpack by Abby Wambach, who is a U.S. soccer Olympic gold medalist. So we will start with the description. From rising young star to co-captain of the 2015 Women's World Cup champion team, Abby Wambach discovered what it truly means to be a champion through her extraordinary soccer career. Whether you're leading from the bench or demanding the ball on the field, real success comes when you harness your inner strength, forge your own path, and band together with your pack. In this young reader's edition of Abby's instant bestseller Wolfpack, she traces her journey from youth soccer to the Hall of Fame, inspiring kids everywhere to unite as a pack and unleash their power. So, because this is a nonfiction book, chapter 1 is really more of an introduction. Most nonfiction books begin with a few pages that sort of set the tone for the book and give you the motivation for why the author wrote it and also what you should kind of be looking for to learn as you read that book. So, here is chapter 1, but also kind of the introduction. So, it is titled Welcome to the Wolfpack. Imagine that you've been asked to give a graduation speech at one of the premier colleges in the nation. You've got 15 minutes to stand behind a podium in a fancy robe and tell hundreds of brilliant young people everything that you know about what makes a good life, what makes a beautiful world, and how to build both. Would it make you stop and think hard about what you believe? Would it make you feel overwhelmed and underqualified? Might it even lead you to sweat all over and wonder if a person who hasn't even graduated from college should really give a college graduation speech? Maybe that last worry was uniquely mine. A few years ago, I was asked to deliver such a speech at Radio City Music Hall in New York City to the 126th graduating class of Barnard College, a women's liberal arts college in Manhattan. The invitation said, "We are awed by your talents on the field, but we are also moved by your commitment to issues like gender equality, pay inequality, and gay rights. Our seniors would be thrilled to have you address them at this watershed moment in their lives." I sat on my couch, read those words twice, and then grabbed my phone and Googled watershed moment. FYI, it means turning point or historic moment. And then I thought, okay, they don't want me to speak just as an athlete. They want me to speak as an activist and a leader at one of the most important moments in their lives. No pressure. The invitation went on to say, former Barnard speakers have included Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Meryl Streep. No big deal, I thought. Only a former U.S. president, the first woman in American history to win the popular vote for the presidency, and the most accomplished actor of all time. More sweat. For the last few years, I had been traveling and speaking to people all over the world as a famous athlete. I spoke about my personal life, my time on the field, and how to win championships. I was a decorated soccer champion. I'd scored more international goals than any woman or man in history. I'd won 2 Olympic gold medals and a FIFA World Cup championship. Now that stuff was cool, but since I was a kid, what I had loved most about soccer was being a teammate and a leader. I loved winning and losing as one team. I loved being a part of something bigger than myself. I loved the shared joy, suffering, failure, and success. I loved the magic of collectively surrendering to an unknown outcome. I loved the closeness of our team dinners, bus rides, and stinky locker rooms. I loved how my teammates and I cared for each other, fought for each other, and respected each other no matter what. What I loved most about soccer was being a teammate to women and a leader of women. As co-captain of the United States women's national soccer team, I was charged with uniting 23 women, each of whom had achieved success because of her individual talent, and inspiring each to commit to the group, the collective. With the help of my teammates, I created a team culture based on more than just excellence. We not only won, we won with joy, honor, connectedness, commitment, and sisterhood. We were not only champions on the field, we were champions of each other. We turned each other into better friends, citizens, and human beings. When I retired, I missed my team and the unique connection that is forged among a group of people working toward a common goal. But as I sat and looked at that invitation, I had this thought. What if my time on the national team was just practice for a bigger game? What if I could find a way to translate our team's culture to more people? What if I could inspire a broader team off the field too? The Barnard women would enter Radio City Music Hall as college students and leave as adults. What if I entered as Abby, a leader on the soccer field, and left as Abby, a leader in the world? I was scared, but I said yes to Barnard anyway. I said yes for those women, but also for myself. The Barnard women weren't the only ones stepping off into an unknown future, reinventing themselves and trying to find their way in the world. I was right there with them. This speech would be a watershed moment for me too. First though, I had to actually write the darn thing. There was a moment in every soccer game when I'd feel the energy shift towards me. Whether it was a morale boost, a momentum swing, or a goal that we needed, it was my job to make that happen. When I felt that shift, I'd say silently to myself, "Let's go, Abby. It's your time." As I sat down to prepare my speech, that's what I told myself. I needed this rally cry too. Giving a speech to young people at this moment in our world's history felt sacred and daunting. We were at a crossroads. There were so many confusing messages to sort through. On the one hand, humanity had made enormous progress on big problems. More children were being educated, fewer people were living in extreme poverty, and it seemed, for a while, that growing numbers of people were becoming less tolerant of bigotry. At the same time, grave dangers were on the rise from climate change, rampant racial, religious, and gender discrimination, and a deepening divisiveness among Americans. It felt like a real possibility that the clock would be turned back on so much of the progress we'd made over the last century for equality. I wanted to believe that I could make a difference. I wanted to believe that I could help these graduates believe that they could make a difference. Because I knew then, as I know now, that young people are this world's greatest hope. But I also knew that this would be a heavy message for those kids to hear. They would know how much I was asking for them. Saving the world is a big challenge to accept. It might have seemed impossible even. But I don't believe in impossible, because the lesson of my life has been a group of passionate people who unite for a larger goal can achieve the impossible again and again. As I focused on what I wanted to share with the women of Barnard, a directive to unleash their individuality, unite the collective, and change the world, my thoughts turned to a TED Talk video I'd watched recently about the wolves in Yellowstone National Park. In 1995, wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone after being absent for 70 years. It was a controversial decision, but the rangers decided it was a risk worth taking because the land was in trouble. During those 70 years, the number of deer skyrocketed because they were alone and unchallenged at the top of the food chain. They grazed unchecked and reduced plant life so severely that riverbanks eroded. Once a small number of wolves arrived, big changes started happening almost immediately. First, they thinned out the deer through hunting. But more important, the presence of the wolves drastically changed the behavior of the remaining deer. Wisely, the deer started avoiding the places they'd been most vulnerable to the wolves, the valleys, and the vegetation in those places grew back. The trees grew 5 times higher in just 6 years. Birds and beavers started moving in. The beavers built river dams, which provided habitats for otters and ducks and fish. Ravens and bald eagles returned to eat the carrion, the meat and bones left over by the wolves. And bears came back because berries started growing again. But that wasn't all. The rivers actually changed as well. The plant regrowth stabilized the riverbanks so they stopped collapsing. The rivers flowed freely again. In short, the plant ecosystem grew back, the animal ecosystem grew back, the entire landscape changed, and all because of the wolves' presence. See what happened there? The wolves, who were feared by so many to be a threat to the system, became the system's salvation. Now, look around our world today. See what's happening here? Young people, maybe you, like the wolves of Yellowstone, are dismissed and underestimated. Maybe you, like the wolves, will become the world's salvation. You are the ones we have been waiting for. You are the wolves. Your wolf pack is your entire generation. Throughout my life, my wolf pack was a soccer team, so I know that every wolf pack needs a unifying structure. The most effective way to create a collective heartbeat is to establish rules for the pack to live by. The U.S. women's national team is a unique thing, an all-women ecosystem separated in many ways from the larger system. FIFA, the international governing body of the sport, largely ignores and devalues women's soccer. The women are on their own. They know if they want respect and a future for the sport, they have to create it themselves. They are a pack of wolves set on changing the landscape of our sport. In 1999, 2 years before I joined the team, the national team went to FIFA and said, "We're going to play in professional football stadiums for the World Cup like the men do." FIFA said, "No, women don't play in those venues. You'll never sell enough tickets." In other words, stay in your place, follow your old rules, and don't be ridiculous. Note, when they say you're ridiculous, you know you're onto something. The U.S. women's national team ignored those warnings and set out to build what they dreamed of. How? By reaching out to the young girls and boys who loved soccer as much as they did. They visited schools and spoke to gymnasiums full of kids. They surprised teams of young girls on soccer pitches. They once drove by a youth soccer tournament and asked the bus driver to pull over so they could talk to the kids about the World Cup. They were scrappy and they were sacrificed. They were zero ego and all heart. They were united and committed to a vision that they knew was possible and were determined to bring to life. This was a grassroots campaign. If they couldn't get backing from FIFA executives at the top, they'd grow their support from the ground up. It was how they planned to rise high enough to shatter the glass ceiling, that invisible barrier that keeps women out of positions of power. And they did. They sold out stadiums. They created the most powerful women's sports movement the world has ever seen, and the biggest event in the history of women's sports. Their final game, played at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena in 1999, was attended by more than 90,000 people. The largest crowd to ever attend a women's sporting event in history. It was also the most watched soccer game in the U.S. to date, including any of the men's World Cup matches. With 40 million people around the world watching the game live, it garnered higher ratings than the finals for both professional hockey and basketball. There were suddenly new rules to the game, written by those women, but only because a bunch of unstoppable visionaries had the courage to break the old ones. As Ava DuVernay, the first Black woman to direct a film nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture, said, "Regarding glass ceilings, I'm mostly bolstered by folks who create their own ceilings. I'm less interested in banging down the door of some man who doesn't want me there. I'm more about building my own house." The message I decided to share with the Barnard students, the message of this book, is this: young people must stop following the old rules, which exist only to maintain the status quo, the way things are right now. Old ways of thinking will never help us build a new world. Out with the old, in with the new. Welcome to the Wolfpack Way, 8 new rules to help young people change the world. That is the introduction to Wolfpack. It is followed by 8 short chapters. You will see it is a relatively short book, so you should be able to power through this pretty quickly. So there are 8 short rules about what you can do to make the world a better place and to make your own pack. So if you found this interesting, come check it out in the library. And if you found this interesting and it is not available when you get here because someone else has already checked it out, this book is shelved in our self-help section, and we have lots of other options that are very similar to this. So run by the library and check it out.